Hi guys, welcome back to yet another review, and this time around I'm bringing you the Tanchjim FISSION. This is one of two IEMs that Tanchjim has released as of late. The FISSION is single dynamic, and they've also got the Force, which is a dual dynamic in a collaboration with Effect Audio. As some of you might know, those that follow me for a longer period of time, I'm a huge Tanchjim fan, and so I will try to not let that affinity that I have for their products to in any way mislead or affect my opinion, although I'm not going to deny it. Yes, if I have a liking for a certain brand, there's always going to be a bias here or there, but as also you guys know, I'm very critical, and when the IM isn't good, and I've done this even with regards to Tanchjim, I will say it isn't good. But anyway, the FISSION single dynamic. Okay, this is the box. I'm not going to bore you with the box. I'm just going to briefly show you what it brings inside. It brings the exchangeable nozzles. Okay, it brings the exchangeable nozzles, which, to be honest, they do very little or nothing to the sound. It brings a tool here to adjust the level of the IEM, which is a bass adjustment roughly, which also the DMT, which is here, also already had the 4UT, sorry. Already had. It brings a decent enough cable. I would have liked a nicer cable, but you know, it's okay. It's exchangeable termination. It also has a exchangeable termination with the DAC. Brings a nice selection of tips. They work actually pretty decently, although I ended up using mostly either these standard bore in the large size, or then what is here, the Venus Velvet. Those were the two tips that I actually decided that gave me, at least, and in my ears, the best performance. All the measurements that I will be showing you subsequently have all been done with the same tip, which is, where did I place it now? Where did you go? There we go. Okay, all done with this wide bore by BGVP, a medium-sized wide bore, and so that was to at least graphically give you a uniformity across the range of the measurements. I then did very slightly the tips that I used. I did use some Tanchjim tips on some of the IEMs. I used some BGVP wide bore. I used the Venus Velvet, like I said. I used the KV Aero 7s as well. So there's been some diversity in terms of the tips that I've used, because I found that I was getting better performance out of those specific tips with that specific IEM in my ear than with just the standard wide bore that I used to measure them, all of them. Anyway, what can we say here? Well, before I actually start talking in more detail about the FISSION, I am sure this is the most comprehensive Tanchjim single DD review that anyone has ever done. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 IEMs here. There's only 2 IEMs here that are missing, and they are missing only because, because of, I don't know, to be honest. I just didn't put them here. One is the Ola bass, and the other is the standard zero. But what have I got here? I've got the Tanchjim Ola. I've got the Tanchjim, the Zero Ultima. I don't have the original zero. I've got here the Origin. I've got here the One. I've got the HANA 2020. I've got here the Bunny. I've got here the FISSION. I've got here the 4U, and I've got here one of my Tanchjim Oxygens. I've got 3 of them of 3 different years, and I've got this one here for a specific reason. Anyway, 4U, my God, my apologies. FISSION. All metal shell, very similar to the shell that we already saw in the 4U. Okay, it's got the same adjustment there, as you can see, for the bass. I've left it in level 1 or level 0, depending on which way you want to name it. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and basically what they're doing is just they're lowering the bass. And so in the lowest setting, they kind of are more reminiscent of the Ola, let's put it that way. And then they've got the exchangeable nozzles. Again, the exchangeable nozzles, they did very little or nothing to change the way that the FISSION actually sounds. So I left it with the standard nozzle and with in the position 1 or position 0, whichever way you want to call it, which is the one that gives the most bass. What is, well, in terms of fitment, fits perfectly. They've got this kind of, let's say, already a typical Tanchjim style of the shell, which, you look here at the HANA and you look at the FISSION, you can see, oh my God, let me hope this thing focuses here. you look at the HANA and you look at the FISSION, and there's obviously reminiscences of one or the other. So they've got their style, which is a style of shell or shape of a shell that might not be the ideal in terms of fitment for some people. Some people might struggle a little bit to get it to fit properly. But overall, I didn't really encounter any particular issues myself. It's a metal shell. It's an all alloy shell. It's as far as I was able to find out, it's CNC machined, and then it uses some peculiarities in terms of what they've done inside. Well, they've first of all, it's using a DMT5 driver, which is a Tanchjim. DMT stands for dual magnetic technology, and it's a system that they've used and they've refined. Not that they invented it themselves. It's not a system unique to them, but they've refined it to their own particular standards, let's put it that way. And it uses a dual magnetic architecture inside of the actual driver to maintain a higher magnetic flux around the voice coil, and thus then not only lower distortion but give better control over the voice coil and better control over the diaphragm, and obviously, of course, ultimately improving the sound of the driver. So the linearity of the driver, controlling unwanted resonances and unwanted peaks and so on and so forth, and impedance variations. In terms of the diaphragm, they use PEQ diaphragms, they use LCP diaphragms. There's a variety of diaphragms that are used. It depends on the model. On the DMT5, I honestly don't want to mislead you, but I believe it's LCP, but I don't want to mislead you. If I'm being incorrect, please, some of you or whoever knows, do correct me. Anyway, using the DMT5 technology. There's also the DMT4 technology, which is basically the same thing. It's just the actual diaphragm material, which is slightly inferior, let's put it that way. So you have a DMT5 technology here in the FISSION and in the Origin, and then basically the Bunny, the 4U, and the Zero Ultima use DMT4 technology. The HANA and the Tanchjim use their venerable carbon, the CNT driver that they became very famous for. So besides using that let's say technology in the way that the driver is actually made, then they also use a mechanism which is a finite element analysis to actually calculate the volume of air that should be placed in front of the driver, and thus optimize the curvature of the driver to the shell. And again, like I said earlier, with regards to the DMT technology, to improve the overall quality of the sound, make the driver more linear, less distortion, less unwanted resonances, and so on and so forth. So technically, Tanchjim, has always made it a point to really put some R&D behind their work. They don't just throw stuff together. They take their time, and that's also reflected in the fact that they don't release as many IEMs as other brands do, and a lot of their IEMs stood the market for, or were in market for a long time. So that's basically, I think, enough to cover the let's say the physical aspect of the FISSION. It's a well-built IEM. It uses a good quality driver. It uses some interesting and novel technology in terms of how that driver is tuned and how the shell is actually designed. So it's not just a putting together of parts and hoping that it all works. Now, they've actually took their time to design it properly and do it properly. In terms of price, I got this particular unit from HiFIGO. This was $129. So when you consider what is being offered in terms of the IEM, the technology involved, the overall accessories and so on and so forth, it's not truthfully really not bad value. If there is any aspect that I would like to have pointed out to, is the fact that would have been nice to have a case, a proper case, and not those kind of soft pocketable cases. I mean, it's honestly the only aspect here that I would have liked Tanchjim to have made an effort on. But the truth be told is they've spent money in where it matters. It's not in the case that it's important, it's in the actual IEM itself. And in that department, the IEM and how it's built and so on, you're getting your money's worth. So that's the most important thing. Okay, talking about the sound now. The moment I heard the Fission, I automatically was taken back to the sound of the original Tanchjim Oxygen. And that's why I said I have got this particular model here of the Oxygen, which is the original, the oldest Oxygen that I have, which is 2019. The subsequent versions that I have, 2021 and a 2023 if I'm not mistaken, they all have a sound which is more reminiscent of the 2020, which means that they've all increased the bass slightly. When I show you the graphs in a couple of minutes, you'll understand what I'm saying. And so what I'm basically saying is, if you were a fan of the original Oxygen, in that the original Oxygen was very known for a phenomenal mid-range presentation. So vocals were open. It was an open sound, and it was the delight for those of us that really enjoyed, you know, spectacular mids. This Fission is for you. This is not in any way a bass monster. And to be honest with you, I think that even the highest setting of bass which it has, they could have actually worked it in a way that they could have given it a little more bass and still maintain some of the other lower settings. And in that way, I think the Fission would have been able to capture the crowd of people that absolutely adore the way that it sounds in the mids, adore the way that it does the highs, but they just wish it had just that smidge little extra bass, which is the only, truthfully, the only little nitpick that I'm going to put here on the Fission. Okay, it's the only nitpick, and it's a minor nitpick, and it's a personal nitpick. Since when, and I'll explain why I'm mentioning this. If you don't have another option of tuning, so if the tuning is as it is, then you cannot, or you try and accept that as a reality, and you don't criticize it. When you have the ability to adjust slightly, either with the nozzles or with a tuning switch like they have here and so on and so forth, then that makes it more versatile. By being more versatile, then you want to see that versatility be a reality. And in terms of the nozzles here on the Fission, much like in the case of the Origin already, you don't see big differences. I mean, they are non-existent, so the nozzles are doing very little or nothing. The only thing here that is actually changing the sound is that adjustment of the switch on the bass. So instead of having a very low bass, very neutral bass, and some bass, they could have had a very low bass, neutral bass, some bass, and a lot bass. They could have done something like that. And so to kind of be a broader, have a broader audience of people that would perhaps consider the Fission as a viable IM. Now, again, let me repeat, this is a nitpick on my side. The bass that it has, although in one or two songs I would have liked it a little bit more, the reality is with all of the jazz music that I like listening to, I truthfully did not see any issue. I truthfully cannot stand here now and say, no, it hasn't. No, it did work. It worked perfectly. Unconditional by Soul Persona, Swept Away by Carol Duboc, In a Sentinel Mood by Cecile Norby, Twilight by Brian Simpson, La Belle Dansant's Regrets from Chris Botti, House of Groove by Eugene Groove, Analog by Soul Persona and Princess Frasier, Sweet by the J.K. Reviv by Danny Kaye, Elephant by Carol Duboc again. All of those songs, which are very common songs that I listen to and I know very well, they were more than well presented, and I was more than happy, to be honest. I was really more than honestly happy. Where did I find it missing a little bit? It was, for example, in House of Groove by Eugene Groove, you listen to that song on the Origin, and the Origin just has that extra little bit amount of weight. It just confers that song a little bit more impact. It just makes it a little bit more realistic, for my ears at least, okay? From Dusk to Dawn by George Duke is another song that in the Origin, it just has that little extra amount of slam to the bass that just makes it sound a little bit more realistic again to my ears. But, you know, it makes up for that. I mean, when you listen to Holding On by Gregory Porter or Feels Good by Rashaan Patterson, phenomenal. I mean, yeah, honestly, phenomenal. The Sea by Haven, wow. Honestly, the Fission playing The Sea by Haven, it's magical. It is truly magical. The Fission really does a phenomenal job of that song. So, you know, I can't be now here overly hard and overly demanding. The Fission did everything that I wanted to do perfectly. With regards to EDM, which I like listening to a lot as well, I mean, let me see here, some Finding Atlantis by Cook and Sands, or Afternoon by Phil Axis, or Afterglow by Clan Carousel. it plays those, it plays that style of music well. Yes, it's EDM, so it's got it's an electronic source, it's an electronic bass. It's more prominent. It's more there. It's a forced bass. Let's put it that way, and it does it well. It does it really well. Actually, I would say that in the cases that some of these songs are overly bassy, the fact that this is moderate in its bass presentation actually makes those songs sound nicer. So you would maybe not get as fatigued, okay, by listening to them for such a long time. So it's a two-way streak here. There are things that in certain instances the fission is missing out slightly, and there are things that in other instances the fact that it's like that actually helps it out. And I would say it's more the positives, well, not more, it's substantially more the positives than the negatives. I would say the ratio would be a 90-10 ratio, to be honest with you, of more times that it actually ended up doing things more positively than it did things in a way that I was kind of okay, I wished. Anyway, bass, clean, detailed, energetic. I mean, clean. I think the best way to describe the bass, it's clean, detailed. It's got enough energy to make it sound the way it should be sound. It's perfectly complemented by the mids and the upper mids and the treble, which clean it up nicely. So bass, not an issue. Mid-range presentation, so vocals, phenomenal. End of story. This is really the type of mid-range presentation that I like. When it's done well, I like other sorts of mid-range presentation because it's not only the mid-range presentation that you have to look at it. You have to look at it at how it matches with the bass and with the treble. But in terms of mid-range presentation, this is the sort of presentation that I like. It's open, it's detailed. Let me just quickly put the graph. Here we go. Fission, yes. There we go. Yeah, that's it. So mid-range presentation. It's open. It's detailed. It's clean. There's nothing that can be faulted. It peaks at around 3K. The pin again, and then starts slowly dropping off. Plenty of extension past 10, so it gives you a really nice open sound stage. It's detailed. Imaging is phenomenal. Micro detailing, macro detailing is phenomenal. Resolution is really, honestly, like I said earlier when I started the review, if you were a fan of the original Oxygen, you will definitely be a fan of the Fission. Definitely, okay? And on top of the Oxygen, I would say that this is more polished in the way that it's actually doing the mids and the highs, in the sense that, let me just quickly here put the graph of the Oxygen so that I don't speak out of my butt cheeks, and let me get the one that I want, which is this one here. So compared to the Oxygen, the original Oxygen, I would even say that the mids and upper mids are more polished in their detail than the original. The original, there were instances when you started pushing the volume that it kind of borderline became aggressive. Borderline. Obviously, this is me now comparing it with the Fission. But I never found the Oxygen to have aggressive highs or mids. But by comparing it to the Fission is able to take the volume up higher and maintaining its composure, maintaining its manners, while the Oxygen kind of started becoming a little bit just too much, okay? And I think that already is saying worlds and heaps about how good the Fission actually is. So for it to be, on the level of an IM, which has the reputation that it has when it comes to the mid-range presentation, I think that speaks for itself. As for the bass, comparing the Fission's bass with the bass of the original Oxygen, I would say that the biggest difference there is that somehow the timbre and the tonality of the original Oxygen sounds a little bit warmer. They graph identical, honestly. You put one and the other, and you truthfully gonna be having a really hard time trying to distinguish between the two of them. But the tonality of the bass on the Oxygen sounds just a little bit warmer, and I think it's down to the fact that Also, there's just that slight less upper mids and treble, and that balance then that's obtained is what makes that feeling of the bass being slightly warmer. But the reality is, be it one or be it the other, they are very open in their mid-range, very open in their vocals, very open in the way that female vocals come out and forward, very, very equal. So I would say that definitely the Fission has repeated, let's say, the glory of the original Oxygen, okay, and it's done it at half the price, offering more accessories and more versatility in terms of tuning. That versatility in terms of tuning obviously becomes a little bit relative because of what I've just mentioned earlier, of the fact that the nozzles are not going to really change anything dramatically. They're doing their job, but in my opinion, not enough to just to be truthfully justifying what they could be doing. Let's put it that way. But yes, it does more than the original Oxygen does, and it does it at half the price. So it makes it a solid option for those that never were able to get the Oxygen, and that now want to know or want to feel what the original Oxygen was about. The Fission will definitely do that for them. Comparing it here with the Origin, and obviously again we're talking about an IM which is more than twice the price, and this is, I mean, it's tuned in a different manner. I like both of the way that I like both ways of the tuning here. I like the tuning not only of the Fission, but I also like the tuning of the Origin. The Origin, now that I've listened to it as well, substantially longer, for a longer period of time, and I've compared it more extensively with the Oxygen and now with the Fission, I would still say that of the three, it's still the one that comes out on top for me personally, because what it trades in terms of losing maybe that ultimate little sparkle up top in terms of the mid-range, or upper mid-range in treble rather, it makes up for it for that little extra warmth in the bass, which I personally welcome very much. I just like that more old school lushness of the sound. It just sounds like, if I was going to make an analogy to cars like I sometimes do, this is a big cubic engine here, okay, while the other ones sound like a, let's say, the other ones are like a nice V6, and this is like a nice V8. I think that's the easiest way I can do it, okay. So I'm going to say that they are for two different crowds of people, the Origin and the Fission. They both are using the same driver, but just tuned in a different manner. Obviously, like I said, there's a huge price difference here. So if you want to get the Fission as a side grade, fine, I would say yes. If you are thinking about selling the Origin to get the Fission, I don't know whether that would be the wisest thing to do. I would say, since the Origin also has exchangeable nozzles, you know what? Get yourself a nozzle kit from Simgot, and try play around with the nozzles by tuning it and finding your own tuning to maybe bring out a little bit more extra treble out of the Origin, if that's what you're lacking, or even just play with the standard nozzle, since they don't change the tuning much. So just play with the other two sets of nozzles that it brings to get the tuning that you perhaps like. So I don't feel that selling the Origin to go into the Fission will be an upgrade. I really don't. Anyway, that's the Origin. As for the rest of the IEMs here that I brought out, I brought them out because I thought it would be interesting as well to kind of position the Fission with regards to the others. The Fission, compared to the 4U, it's an upgraded 4U. It's a 4U in a lot of the things, but it's upgraded in terms of the overall sound. And the difference in price, by not being that huge, I would say that of the two, the one that makes the most sense is definitely the Fission. So I would say that the 4U, the Fission, and the original Oxygen, they have a particular sound that they share in common. So mids, clean, detailed, that's their forte. Okay, the Bunny and the Hana, they share the same similar sound. They have that extra bass, and then that more lush feel to the overall tonality of how it is. To a certain extent, the Origin and the One also kind of fall into this group of IEMs, yeah, of this style of tuning. I would say the Zero Ultima is more along the lines of the Fission and of the For You as well. So I would look at the Zero Ultima as kind of a cheap way of getting a little bit of the magic of the Fission. Because I mean, this is like $15 or $16. Fair enough, it hasn't got an exchangeable cable, but I guess with a little bit of you know, a little bit of desire, and if you play around slow, you know, carefully to not to damage the shell, sorry, you can open it up and make it have exchangeable cables. I did that to a particular one, to another set of Tanchjim zeros that I had. So I mean, the Zero Ultima, if you want to have it, if you want to change it and make it have exchangeable cables, I mean, it can be done. It's not you just got to have steady hands and know what you're doing. So I would say the Zero Ultima is again falling in the group here of the Fission and of the For You. And as for the Ola here is the dark horse, because the Ola in its standard tuning, and there's the Ola bass as well, but the Ola in its standard tuning was in essence kind of like a For You or a Fission with the lowest setting of the bass implemented, in the sense that was cutting the bass the most. So it had a very early drop off in the bass. It made it very mid-centric, very really good, you know, very good in that aspect, but very sterile sounding, very cold sounding. But now the dark horse comes where it comes in the fact that you take the Ola and you do a little bit of magic like I did on it, and this thing becomes an absolute monster. Okay, this thing can become, in my opinion, a mini MIM Dark Magician, if that's your fancy. And I've done that, and I couldn't be happier, honestly. This is you know, a really impressive IEM. DMT4 technology as well, similar driver used to the Zero Ultima and to the Fission, maybe an earlier generation of that driver since it's been around for a while. But wow, this can be really made to sound spectacular. As for the Tanchjim one, this was another IEM that I mentioned when it came out, that was a very positive surprise for me, because it was a return to a little bit more of that glory that Tanchjim had in terms of the sound, after having some IEMs like the Ola and so on and so forth that really weren't, you know, what kind of many of us were expecting. So the one, I think, is a budget way of getting the sound of the Origin. And that's basically it, guys. I think I've more or less kind of positioned the other Fission, which was the main idea. So the Fission at $129, it's got a mid-tier price. It places itself very competitively against other IEMs. I will be making another single DD comparison IEM where I will compare the Fission with other IEMs. But in this particular review, I just wanted to place it in the universe of Tanchjim and where it stands in the universe of Tanchjim. And in conclusion, my opinion about the Fission is well done. It's definitely an upgraded For You. Much of the inspiration in every aspect was fetched on the For You. They're using a better driver. They used the smarter tuning. They used more tuning methods. Let's put it that way. And the Fission, in essence, for me, just rekindles the magic of the original Oxygen, when we had those phenomenal mids be the star of the show. And they've done it. They've fetched that magic of the original Oxygen. They've given us that really impressive mid-range and vocal sound, and given it to us at half the value. So I mean, you really can't complain. Anyway, let me now quickly just show you the graphs and we'll wrap it up. Okay, guys. So we start off here with the graphs for the Fission with the different levels of bass adjusted by that switch. And as you can see, the nozzles, they do absolutely nothing. The nozzles, I change the nozzles and they basically stay always the same. The switch here is what changes. Yes, there is some variation between level 1 or level 0 and then level, so 0, 1, 2, 3 or level 1, 2, 3, 4, whichever you want. Level 2, I think, is still acceptable. It does still maintain just enough bass energy. But I think that then level 3 and level 4 are just way too lean, so I really didn't spend much time listening to those levels. They reminded me especially of the Ola, like I mentioned earlier. So I did all the listening in this level here. as you can see by what then I said earlier, nicely kind of mutually spaced presentation. There's no tons of bass here, but the bass that exists is very clean. That 100 hertz point there corresponds to below 2 kilohertz, which isn't ideal, as you guys know, but as is the case with some IEMs, and Tanchjim has done that, the balance that they've been able to struck between the bass and the highs and the mids and the highs, sorry, is a nice balance. So, but yes, the focus of the sound is in mid-range presentation. Vocal presentation is phenomenal. That's where the Fission definitely shines. I mean, this here is with the Velvet. The Definus Velvet changed slightly the way it ends up being up top. I mean, the difference isn't big, as you can see. It's not a huge difference, and I actually ended up using the Velvets for the majority, if not the totality, or the total of amount of the listening session. I mean, I did a little bit of listening with the stock tips, but the Definus Velvet just made it a more pleasant listen to me, and that's it. So that's the Fission. Okay, now comparing it then with what I was saying earlier about how it stacks up against other IEMs and from Tanchjim, and how the actual sound is or isn't. Okay, let's not now mislead anyone here, because I don't want to do that. Let's start here by the 4U. The 4U. There we go. That's the Tanchjim 4U. A lot of similarities. I wouldn't say that there is much to be picked up in terms of this. I would rather say that yes, the 4U is just slightly down in the upper mids. But there's a lot of similarities between the sounds of the two, and that's why I categorize them under the same group. And because of that, I said that, you know, the Fission is definitely the better one to choose between the two of them, unless you obviously cannot afford it. So if you're looking for that same style of more mid-focused, open, mid-range type of sound, definitely the Fission will be the better option, as compared then with the oxygens, like I mentioned as well. Okay, this is the original oxygen. I'm going to take the other 4U out. So that's the original oxygen, okay, compared with the Fission. And as you can see, very, very similar in terms of overall bass, a little bit more below 80 hertz, a little bit less here in this 200 to 800 area, and then a little bit less there. But ultimately, they basically sound the same. What I did notice was that the oxygen was maybe just not as ultimately polished when you really push the volume. But guys, that's me nitpicking. Trust me, that's me nitpicking, and I would be bad-mouthing one of my favorite IAMs of all time, which is the Tanchjim Oxygen, if I was saying otherwise. The oxygen is incredible, okay? Comparing, just quickly for you guys to see, this here, sorry, no, not this. Okay, this is the Tanchjim HANA 2020. Okay, Tanchjim HANA 2020. This was one of the oxygens past the original one. As you can see, exactly, basically the same. I mean, very little to no difference. This here is another one, even more similar, I would say, to the HANA. I mean, they graph almost identical. This one, if I'm mistaken, is the 2023 version, while this one here is a 2021 version, okay? And this here is the original one. So original in green, 2021 version. Okay, so let's check where the HANA. Okay, and then this is the 2023 version versus the HANA, and let's put here the Fission so you guys can see how the Fission stacked up. So Fission is number 25. So you can definitely see that the Fission has lost to those versions of the oxygen, but compared to the original, very much the same. Okay, very much compared, I mean very equal to the same, to the original oxygen. All right, so that's that. Compared to now the origin, which is fission. Yes, number 23. This is the origin. You would think that the sort of the you know, because the way that the bass is being tuned here in one and the other is very similar, that they would sound similar, but they don't. The bass of the origin, although it's more down to the fact that this upper part here has been tuned slightly, the bass of the origin just sounds more authoritative. It's not a huge difference, but it's got enough extra weight for you to pick up on it. And ultimately, look guys, it's like I said, you either want a more you decide what's the type of sound that you like the best. Obviously, be it the origin or be it the fission, the fact that you know, the nozzles aren't changing much unless you start playing around with the nozzles to really make big differences in the sound. If you just stick to the one nozzle and the one setting, which is the one that you ultimately prefer, you will notice that there's a difference between the fission and the origin. You'll pick up on that difference, and the difference is the fission is more open in terms of the mid-range, more open vocals. The origin is more lush in the mids and lower mids, and has slightly more bass slam. It's the graph doesn't actually do justice to how easily it is for you to pick up on that. Because you'll pick up on it. Now, be it the origin or be it the fission, they are both phenomenal IEMs. End of story. So I would say if you can afford it, have both of them, get both of them. Okay. I mentioned as well that the origin had a lot in common with the one, or rather the one had a lot of common with the origin, and that's the one there, and you can see why. Same sort of bass, same sort of mids, very equal. So I would say the one is an easy or a cheap way for you to have the magic of the origin if you can't afford the origin. Okay, that's the origin, that's the one, that's the origin, that's the one. The other IEM that kind of also falls within more or less this type of style of tuning is the bunny, which is here 19. Let me just take away here the one, the bunny. I'm just going to make the bunny red compared to the origin. Okay, so that's the bunny in red and the origin. I would even say that maybe because of this, in terms of ease of fitment, the bunny will probably be maybe the better choice for you to get a sound which is kind of reminiscent of the origin, but with an easier fitment. Definitely the bunny will be the wiser IEM. It's got a really nice warm tonality. It's contrary to, like, for example, and let me just show you the Zero Ultima so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so that's the bunny there, and the Zero Ultima. Change the color. That's the Zero Ultima and the bunny. Zero Ultima is more, like I said, fission. Bunny is more origin. These two, they share basically the same driver, and their tuning, I think I won't be saying anything that's offensive or wrong. Their tuning has been done, I think, purposely to emulate one or the other high range version, or rather, since yes, the origin was first, so the bunny would be a cheaper way of getting the origin sound, and I would say the fission now is an updated version, let's say, of the sound that you got in the 4U and in the sound that the Zero Ultima can give you. So if you can't afford a fission or a 4U, you get the Zero Ultima, and you'll basically have the same sort of sound, where the mids here are definitely the start of the show. Guys, and that's basically it. Oh, just quickly, because I mentioned it as well, and I don't want to not show you, which is the Ola, but the revised version of the Ola. So number 10. Okay, the Ola, there's two versions of the Ola that I made. That one, and I also made where is it now? Oh my god, whenever you want something, it's always a mess. Yes, the last one, 27. Okay, So just take away some of these other IEMs here so they're not in the way. Okay, these are the tunings I did for the Ola, one with a little bit more bass, one with a little bit less bass. A little bit more bass, this version, a little bit thick on the mid-range, on the mid-bass impact. Sounds tremendous, honestly. And the other one, let me just take away this one, and the other one, which actually is the one that I just curiously end up using the most, is this one. Slightly a little bit less bass, but also, I mean, truthfully, phenomenal sounding. It sounds really, really good. And just for the sake of comparison, comparing it with the Zero Ultima, okay, as you can see there, comparing it with, so Zero Ultimate, comparing it with Fission. Okay, not as detailed as the Fission, but the same sort of bass definitely there. Perhaps sounding a little bit more impactful because of the fact that it doesn't have as much energy in upper mids and treble, definitely. So yeah, I mean, look, that was just for the sake of curiosity. Anyway, guys, I hope I was clear enough. I was able to clarify the issue or the position of the Fission. You know, where it stands, where it doesn't stand, what it's capable of doing, what it isn't capable of doing. As always, like and subscribe. Any questions you might have, please feel free to ask me. All right, you take care now. Bye-bye.